started in Silicon Valley, and how did that lead to you ending up at Ripple?
I've always been a bit of a techie and did some coding earlier in my career, or not career, but really in school, I guess. And when you come out of school, and I finished business school in 1997, and the internet is booming. I do think, as I'm sure we'll talk about, given last week's news with the Coinbase IPO, I remember where I was the day that Netscape went public in 1995, and the expression "when in Rome." If you were interested in this segment of the economy in the late 90s, you wanted to be in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, and so I moved out here in 1997, and as you pointed out, I've done a few different positions at smaller companies, bigger companies, and spent a little bit of time on both the investment side of the world as well as the operating side.
Got it. And when you were at Yahoo, you famously penned the Peanut Butter Manifesto. Can you tell us a bit about that and where you see Yahoo today, given since you penned that letter?
Look, I'll start by saying I have such a fond set of memories from my experience working at Yahoo. The people, the culture, in many ways, was just a really fabulous time. I do think, like many companies, you spread yourself thin. You get excited about new opportunities, and at that time, Yahoo, I think, was a little bit confused about what it was trying to be. And, was it trying to be a search engine? Was it trying to be a content platform with Yahoo News, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Finance, and even fantasy sports stuff? And then, of course, Yahoo had a robust set of kind of application products like Yahoo Mail. At the time, Yahoo Mail was much bigger than Gmail, and actually continued to grow after Gmail launched quite substantially. But it's sad for me to see kind of what has got Yahoo now, as many people know, has been absorbed within the Verizon Media empire, and I think relative to where it was back in the early 2000s, it's not quite the same. But I'm still a loyal user of some of the Yahoo products.
Wow, I heard some news recently of Yahoo Answers. I think they're sunsetting it, which kind of made me sad. It's such a huge part of the internet legacy.
Yeah. I think that Yahoo Answers is one that, Yahoo Groups used to be in my group at Yahoo. I ran everything from the homepage to Yahoo Mail and some other things, and Yahoo Groups was in my organization, and we actually sunsetted Yahoo Groups when I was there. And the reason was, and I think the reason I'm bringing this up is I think the internet and the social media as we know it today could learn from this. At Yahoo Groups, we realized that our ability to the cost relative to the benefit of monitoring Yahoo Groups for the abusive behaviors and the illegal activity made it untenable. Like, we couldn't really operate the service efficiently. And as I have said very publicly, and I think you may know, I sued YouTube, and Ripple sued YouTube because so many people were impersonating me using Ripple's brand to scam people. And I think a number of the social media platforms really can and should be more a part of the solution, and I think they have been. I think the platforms have been abused in ways that have hurt society in some ways. And you may also know there's a really powerful documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, which I thought was really impactful, and made sure my kids watched it.
Yeah, it's certainly a problem because I get impersonators on my channel, and it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook. It's hard to keep up with. It's kind of ridiculous at this point. Hopefully your lawsuit is going to force some changes, but we'll see what happens.
I think it brings attention to it. I don't think it's going to force changes, but I think what I find most frustrating, which sounds like you've experienced also, is you identify someone representing, pretending to be you and trying to scam people, and you report it, and it takes days and sometimes even weeks for it to come down. I actually had one time that was kind of funny. I did tweet about this. It's quite some time ago, but I reported a fake account on Instagram of someone impersonating me, and Instagram wrote back saying, "Hey, we looked into this, thanks for reporting it, we take it seriously." like, wait, that's a picture of me. Gotta be kidding right now.
Well, certainly the industry that we're in, blockchain, could certainly solve that, right? If the profiles were created and tagged to the blockchain and that verification is there.
It's kind of funny you mentioned this. When I first joined Ripple, and I just passed my 6-year anniversary of the company, we actually were working on 3 different, but also interrelated to the Peanut Butter Manifesto comment, but Ripple is working on 3 different kind of go-to-market initiatives leveraging the XRP Ledger. One of them was a global ID project, the idea of using a blockchain for identity management. The other one's a smart contract platforms is, I think, somewhat infamously, Vitalik Buterin spent some time as an intern and sleeping on the couch of our CTO at the time, Stefan Thomas. And the third was payments related, and particularly cross-border payments. And we decided to pick one and focus. And it was kind of the lesson I had learned around the Peanut Butter Manifesto. Really, decide what you're going to be great at and invest heavily and grow that segment. But the global ID, to your point, leveraging a blockchain for identity management, I think, is a very real opportunity. I think it's a hard one to do well, in part because, whether we like it or not today, the government owns our identity, right? You say to someone, hey, verify your identity, generally you're going to look for a passport, some sort of state-issued identification, a birth certificate. All those things are issued by the government. And so I think to do identity well today, I think there has to be some collaboration and partnering with government entities, which makes it maybe a little harder to scale and grow in the way that I think some technologies can.
Sure, and I'm assuming you're up to speed with what Greg Kidd is doing, obviously a Ripple investor in Global ID and the work they're doing on that front.
Yes, and look, nothing would make me happier than to see that be massively successful. To the point you and I were just talking about, it would help. The Instagrams and YouTubes of the world would point out how hard their job is, and if Greg Kidd and team are successful, I think that's good for those platforms also.
Got it. So I want to know about Michael Arrington. He has published some interesting photos of you feeding goats and all kinds of things. How did you become and expecting more releases, ICOs or something, photos?
God, I hope not. The photo, the Boy Scout photo was a particularly embarrassing one, but Mike, I consider a good friend. I've known him probably a couple decades, and kind of early on in his creation of TechCrunch, a Ripple employee who now works at Ripple named Kirsten Hollers first introduced Mike and I, and one of the things I've always liked about Mike is he will speak truth, and even if it's a controversial truth, his truth sometimes, but I think sometimes that's an underappreciated perspective on in other people. And so I may not always agree with Mike, but I always respect his opinion, and I always appreciate his friendship and really enjoy spending time with him.
So on that note of photos of you, things along those lines, the dichotomy of working at Yahoo and being in Silicon Valley to now being head of one of the companies that is getting maximum visibility, and now you have memes and conspiracy theories, and I'm so curious to get your perspective. How do you feel about that? How do you and Chris and the other folks at Ripple, and how do you handle that?
Well, I mean, maybe answer that a couple different ways. I mean, for what it's worth, I view myself as a pretty private person, and my personal side of my life, I try to keep pretty private. Look, I have been vocal, and I don't try to be private as it relates to my professional position, and I've certainly been vocal about my strong opinions around what's going on in the crypto industry. Regulation is certainly, I'm sure, something we'll spend a good amount of time talking about. Most of the memes I just find to be comical, and I admit sometimes I have a sense of humor, and I like to have fun, and so I think sometime, maybe over the weekend or maybe last Friday, I was reading Twitter, and somebody was talking about that there's going to be a movie of this story, which would not surprise me at this point. Nothing would surprise me.
Got it. So I want to ask before we go into the SEC and Ripple and XRP and so forth. What was your first encounter with cryptocurrencies? Was it Bitcoin? How did you hear about it? And what are you holding in your crypto portfolio?
I attended a conference hosted by a gentleman, Oren Hoffman and Peter Thiel, called Dialogue. And the conference has kind of evolved since the earliest days, but it was a conference in Utah, 2012 or 2013, and there's various kind of, it's not so much a conference where you have, a presenter presenting something to 100 or 1,000 people. It tends to be, a small group of maybe 10 or 12 people around a conference table where one person has been designated as leading the dialogue. And, there's topics that you always know nothing about, and it's an interesting cross-section of government, even some military and techies. And there was a session in 2012, 2013 on Bitcoin. I'd never heard of Bitcoin. And, some of the people I consider the people I respect the most, even today, as early visionaries around what Bitcoin could mean and what digital assets could mean. I remember returning to the Bay Area after that conference and buying some Bitcoin. And today I've talked about the fact that I'm long Bitcoin. I remain a bull, and I'm frankly very bullish on the future of Bitcoin. And then, of course, I have plenty of exposure to XRP as another digital asset.
Got it. So no Ethereum, nothing else, no Cardano or anything like that?
Look, I'm just not, I don't view myself as a trader. And I think, some people who, they're traders and they're doing lots of these sort of things. I'm very busy with all things Ripple, and so I think to do that well, you're going to have to pay more attention to what's going on. I guess I am one thing I should have, in full disclosure, before I joined Ripple, I was an angel investor in a company called Protocol Labs, which is behind Filecoin, so I think I have exposure to Filecoin also.
Got it. All right, let's switch gears and talk about the SEC lawsuit and everything that's going on. I have quite a few questions, but things are moving so fast, so rapidly. And could you give us a state of the union here of where are we at? What discussions are you having with the SEC right now, the case, and all of that, if you can?
Sure. And, look, as you and I talked, as we organized this, there's some questions I may, explicitly dodge and just say, and there's others I may just, kind of answer around it. Suffice it to say, I think it's very clear that what I said at the very beginning of this, when the SEC announced their intent to bring the lawsuit, I think the SEC is wrong on the facts. I think they're wrong on the law. I think how we have seen this play out is demonstrating some of that. This is not I actually agree it has moved, at a reasonably good clip. But by the same token, the engine of the justice system isn't necessarily, super fast. And so, we've got a long way to go. I remain hopeful that, as time progresses, there'll be additional opportunities to engage the SEC in conversations about what could be a constructive outcome here that's, provides the clarity that, frankly, Ripple and I have sought for a long time and even, pounded the table about. But also give the entrepreneurs and investors and here in the United States the ability to participate in these markets and continue to grow them here at home. There have been a couple pretty consequential rulings from the court in the last 3 weeks. I think to me the most important one amongst those was the judge's decision to allow discovery around the SEC's decision to determine to publicly state anyway that Ether is not a security and that Bitcoin is not a security. And I think it's even interesting, why they thought that. If we want to provide clarity and transparency to the market, let's provide that. And so, I was pleased that the judge ruled in our favor on that.
feel there's some sort of conflict of interest here on Jay Clayton's part, given where him and Mr. William Hinman, the places they find themselves now at, with in connections to Ethereum and so on and so forth?
Yeah. Look, suffice it to say, it's super frustrating. Obviously, this was a decision that was made literally the day before Jay Clayton left his position. I think it's very clear Jay Clayton was not a friend to the crypto industry, and I think this was I think his legacy will show that. And doing this day before he left, I don't know. I'm not really that much of a conspiracy theorist. Certainly, the optics on some of the decisions that Jay Clayton has made since then, and certainly Bill Hinman has made since then, it don't look great. The fact that Simpson Thacher is a member of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, and he's getting paid by Simpson Thacher while he's there, those things don't look great. But I'd like to believe that now that we are in front of a neutral fact finder or in front of a court, that we'll get to the right outcome, and I think that the facts will bear that out. And I think I'm pleased about kind of how it's going so far.
Got it. And what are your thoughts on Gary Gensler? Obviously, well versed in crypto, he's taught at MIT. He's spoken about Ripple, XRP, Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts about him coming in, and have you already started talks with him?
Look, I think relative to, as we were just talking about with Jay Clayton as chairman, Gary Gensler comes in as truly, very knowledgeable. I mean, literally, he taught the class. I mean that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but somewhat seriously. And so, the fact that he was teaching at MIT about cryptocurrencies, and as you have seen, he gave lectures about things like XRP, I think is incredibly valuable to the whole industry. I think, I don't think Jay Clayton deeply understood some of these technologies. One of when they announced, when Bill Hinman announced that Ethereum was not going to be viewed as a security, one of the things he hung that on was this idea around decentralization. Then I think they very quickly realized, well, the XRP ledger is, equally, if not more so, decentralized. And so that became, well, let's not talk about that anymore. Let's talk about other things. And I think, frankly, back to the discovery, I think, some of those things I expect we will see as we get more and more discovery from the SEC.
Got it. And what do you think about John Deaton's, the attorney John Deaton, lawsuit on behalf of XRP holders?
That came as a surprise to me, and I think everyone at Team Ripple, and it's fascinating to watch it because, when the SEC decided to bring this lawsuit, despite having been warned by a previous SEC commissioner, there's a massive destruction of value, right? About $15 billion of value went out of the XRP market, and obviously, many exchanges here in the United States halted trading of XRP.
So I want to ask you about, in your mind, what's your ideal scenario outcome here, given that we have this lawsuit, we have a neutral party of the judge in place, Gary Gensler coming in, what would be your ideal outcome?
Well, I mean, my ideal outcome or my pragmatic outcome? I mean, look, I've seen actually people on Twitter talk about this. I want closure. I want clarity. For people who have followed this before the lawsuit, I've been saying for at least a couple of years that we have lacked clarity in the United States. In contrast, you've got major economies around the world, like the UK, like Japan, like Switzerland, like Singapore. I mean, these are not, really small economies. These are big economies with robust government infrastructure that have provided the clarity that have allowed entrepreneurs, that have allowed those that would choose to speculate in digital assets to do so with that clarity and certainty. And here in the United States, we haven't had that. And so, someone had said, well, maybe, there's I'm quoting a Twitter tweet roughly, someone had said, well, if they walk away from the case, we won't have the certainty we've been looking for. Maybe we want to keep the case, we want to get to the closure. And I kind of agree with that. If we've been asking for that for 2 or 3 years, we're now, for better or for worse, we're on a path to get it, and it's unfortunate it has to come from the courts. For better or for worse, the SEC has not gone through the rule-making processes that would provide the certainty even for Bitcoin or Ether. And one of the reasons why I said when the SEC first filed this lawsuit that this was an attack on crypto is because if you're going to say that about XRP, where is that dark line where this is and that isn't? And I think as more and more people are finding, that it's a slippery slope. Even last week, I think Barry Silbert came out and said it would be, I'm paraphrasing here, but roughly speaking, he said that it would be dangerous for U.S. exchanges to unhalt or relist XRP. And at the same time, he was removing XRP from one of his funds, but adding Chainlink, I think. Well, the clarity doesn't exist for Chainlink. The clarity, it's one of these like, well, wait a minute, did you really think through all of that? And it's one of the reasons why we have tried to, really educate the crypto market at large that this isn't good for the whole crypto industry.
Right.
And, really, I think, how do we all work together and help create legislation, help create that clarity and that certainty? So, my ideal outcome, clarity and certainty are first amongst them. How do we get there? Well, as quickly as possible, I want to get there with the SEC so that Ripple can operate effectively, so that lots of other companies that are operating in the XRP ecosystem can operate with that clarity and certainty. But at this point, given they did decide to file the lawsuit, I think we need to either reach a clear settlement that provides that clarity and certainty, or let the judge make that decision.
Sure. And do you see another avenue? Let's say the SEC can't get their act together for whatever reason, but Congress has to step in here with a token taxonomy act or change the law, or President Biden, whatever, just something happens on that front. You see that as a possibility as well?
Oh, for sure. For zero doubt about that. I mean, when there aren't clear laws, it's Congress's job to provide clear laws. And, to the extent I have anything nice to say about the SEC today, there is a rulemaking process through which they could go about. They chose not to do that and use enforcement as a way to try to create clarity, which I think is extremely inefficient and really bad for, in this case, Ripple, and really the entire XRP community. But there was something called the Digital Commodity Exchange Act introduced in the last session of Congress, and in the Agricultural Committee, and I hope that either that or something very similar, and I'm not sure anything's been introduced yet, but I expect there will be new efforts to solve this through legislation, and I think that could be even a more efficient path than what we're dealing with through the court system, because the court system will make a determination, assuming it gets all the way there, about XRP, and did Ripple engage, or did I personally, or Chris Larsen personally engage in selling unregistered securities? But that won't solve the problem for everyone else. It'll provide a precedent. But really, I think, if we could get clarity through legislation, that could be very powerful for the whole industry. But one more thing, and I know I'm rambling, but just bear with me one sec. Having been a student of the internet back in the late 90s, one of the reasons why the United States was such a early investor and leader in the internet technologies and companies around it is because there was that clarity. There was certainty. And when they have those things, investors and entrepreneurs come into those markets. And instead, what we have here in the United States, we don't have those things. And so you see a lot of that happening outside the United States, which I think is unfortunate, for here in the United States. You mentioned the UK having a very clear taxonomy, I think they call it the Token Taxonomy Act or something like that, that really differentiate different assets by use case, which I think did provide leadership in the UK, and I think Singapore has provided a lot of leadership, and Japan is another example.
So on that note, with the lawsuit and all, you remember you tweeting something about getting some more gray hairs and things like that, obviously a stressful situation. Has Ripple lost any customers? Has this put a roadblock in gaining new customers? Can you tell us about that?
Well, look, I actually, there's a little bit, mostly good news here. I think we publicly have shared that we've signed over 20 new customers since the SEC brought their lawsuit. Uh, you know, we processed about 3 million transactions last year on RippleNet, which was, up 5x year on year. We expect continued very strong growth this year. And so in a lot of ways, I feel really good about that. Uh, about well over 90% of our customers going into this lawsuit were non-U.S. customers. And, of the 20 plus that we've signed, none of them have been U.S. customers, not surprisingly. So, look, Ripple has always been a very global company. As we talked about earlier, XRP trading has always been very, very global with, XRP liquidity on about 200 exchanges around the world. We have, though, it has caused some headwinds, here in the United States. Very well known, our partnership with MoneyGram, we both kind of mutually agreed to step away from for the time being. But we also, as I already commented, we've been able to grow, in some ways, accelerate our growth. We've made a couple big deals. One, Tranglo, we agreed to acquire about 40% of a pretty large payment provider in Southeast Asia. They do about 20 million transactions a year and about $4 billion of value. So, we hired an amazing leader in Southeast Asia, Brooks Enswile, who joined us from Uber, which has been great to kind of jumpstart some of that leadership as well.
Yeah, no, so you mentioned Tranglo. I also saw Novati is if I'm saying that right, is a new customer of yours. They will be leveraging ODL.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, look, ODL, on-demand liquidity, is the product we offer that allows customers to tap into XRP as a way to shuttle liquidity. Our customers have loved it. We have a lot of demand for it. Obviously, the SEC's actions here in the United States have kind of stymied that, but Asimo, Novati, these are all customers who are benefiting from ODL, and even despite the SEC's actions, continue to do so.
So I want to ask about, and I know you probably can't talk a lot about this because things are under NDA and all that, but I'm certain you're speaking to banks in the United States and payment service providers in the United States. Have those conversations been put on hold, given the lack of clarity as a whole, even before the lawsuit? And are you, can you tell us about the dynamic of that? Is it like, hey, we'll talk to you 6 months from now once this is all over, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can talk about this directionally. For certain, here in the United States, it has been a constant headwind in the past years, and it went from being a headwind to just, hey, we're going to stop. For U.S. companies to engage, particularly U.S. public companies that are regulated by the SEC, it takes some real conviction and risk tolerance to do that. Now, in the SEC's in the court, the SEC has actually, somewhat ironically said that they have not taken the position that the secondary markets are, selling of unregistered securities, and that don't blame the SEC for that. I mean, I think they said this as part of the John Deaton case that he filed in federal court in Rhode Island. But their argument and retort to his case was, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but hey, don't blame us, blame the exchanges. The exchanges are the ones that delisted, not us. And you're just like, come on, you're supposed to be working for the people. You're working to protect investors. It didn't feel, to me, it didn't feel like consistent with the mission of the SEC.
Sure, and I think they're hearing about it on Twitter. There are different handles, which I think rightfully so. Now, given the evolution of Ripple as a company, the adoption of XRP worldwide, different companies building on the XRP ledger, so on and so forth, what's the vision as of today for XRP? Is it still the bridge asset use case, micropayments with Coil, web monetization, things like that? Can you give us an overview?
Well, I mean, you did a pretty good job right there. I mean, yes, look, XRP is an extremely efficient digital asset for payments in particular. For Ripple as a company, we've started with cross-border payments and using XRP around on-demand liquidity. But Ripple also, we're expanding in last year, I think in start playing in the lending space, which is really an extension of some of the services we were already offering to those same customers. And you should expect that we will continue to think about that customer set and how we can continue to add value. And more to come on that, and we're excited about what that holds. One of the things I've talked publicly about a little bit is I was, because we have a long form interview here, when I was in business school, Jeff Bezos in 1996 came to our class, and he talked about Amazon, and he talked about Amazon, the bookseller, and Amazon was competitive with Barnes and Noble and Borders Books, and that was it. And I've said that I view Amazon is to books as Ripple is to cross-border payments, as something that I do believe there are many compelling use cases. There are many compelling vertical opportunities, vertical markets to apply blockchain technologies to. And the XRP Ledger is an extremely efficient blockchain. And so there's many other use cases that we think about, and we think we could apply our expertise in enterprise sales as well as the efficiency of the XRP Ledger to solve some of those problems. And so I'm excited about what I think will be ahead. We're almost 500 people strong and trying to hire 150 or 200 people from now until the end of the year. So we're still certainly in the face of some headwinds from the United States SEC. We're still investing heavily in growing.
I'm excited to hear that, and there's a question that came from the community I have to ask, and I'm interested as well. The central banks that you're currently working with, and the private ledger, and issuing CBDCs on the XRP Ledger, things along those lines. What can you tell us there? I know there's probably not a lot, but as much as you can hint to.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to hint. I'm just going to try to answer the question as best I can. Look, first of all, I hope everyone who follows Ripple closely and follows the XRP community closely can appreciate when we're working with particularly large banks or any customer, we try to respect any announcements to respect what they want to announce, when they want to announce it, things like that. And so sometimes that's frustrating for us. I remember there was a certain patent filing that came from one large bank that referenced Ripple in a certain way, and of course generated a lot of questions, and I didn't have much to say about that. There was some attention because some central bankers' schedules are public information. So I've seen the rumors out there. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. The XRP Ledger is extremely efficient. It's extremely scalable, and you can issue other assets on the XRP Ledger. And so I have said publicly, we often are asked by central banks to come and talk to them about whether it's the XRP Ledger or about how we think about the future of payments using digital assets. And because of our unique position with really compelling technology and the ability to offer a private version of the open source technology as XRP Ledger, central banks can create and manage their own digital currency. So again, we haven't been shy about that. Yes, we're having those conversations with many banks, many central banks around the world. We did some research. I think we publicly shared that we think about 80% of central banks around the world are actively investigating one way or another what CBDCs could mean for their technology or for their economy. So we'll continue to do that, and when we have announcements, we'll certainly do so.
So I recently interviewed Chris Giancarlo, former CFTC chairman, heading up the Digital Dollar Project. What are your thoughts on? Look, China looks like it's beating the U.S. at this point when it comes to a CBDC. And do you see the dollar losing reserve status as a result? And look, there's small island countries that have got their CBDCs live already. What are your thoughts on the entire situation?
Well, I guess first of all, I don't think it's fair to compare a tokenized dollar to what some small economies have done. It's just like not even the same. It's a much more complicated topic. There's no doubt in my mind that the Chinese Communist Party has been very strategic and I think very smart about how they have approached this. I thought, some of you I'm sure have seen, and I'm sure that your viewers have seen, Peter Thiel's interview last week or maybe the week before, talking about the implications of what's going on in China and, even the potential implications of Bitcoin. Look, I try to look at how do I solve a customer's problem and how do I create value for that customer. I do think about big picture where this could go and where it could end up, but I think sometimes people spend so much time talking about the vision and not enough time talking about, okay, what do we need to do tomorrow? How do we actually catalyze these things? And look, one of the reasons I think Ripple has been successful is because we try to balance the big picture. We have a vision around enabling an internet of value and around enabling XRP as that bridge asset that can be universal. But in order to get there, you got to have a really clear, blocking and tackling kind of bit by bit. And so I think the U.S. has, from a macro point of view, fallen behind in this industry. I'm not saying that about, should the U.S. do a central bank issue digital asset. I'm more just saying when there's not regulatory clarity, dollars and entrepreneurs go elsewhere. And you have seen, China provide leadership here. What's the long-term implication for the dollar as a reserve currency? I think it's much too early to opine on that.
So there's been mentions and talks like the Fed payments now, I think, has endorsed Ripple and the technology and the work you guys have been doing. Has there been ongoing conversations with them? Are you supporting them in any way with coming up with a CBDC or whatever it may be?
We're talking to lots of governments around the world.
Okay. Now, there's
if I start commenting on specific governments talking about it, it's like it's a game that's like, look, I'm not going to provide transparency and clarity to kind of all of those pieces, and suffice it to say, again, I'll go back to just the XRP ledger is extremely efficient. It's efficient from a cost per transaction, a speed of transaction, and look, one of the things we haven't talked about today, the energy footprint of these technologies, it matters. It really, really matters. I'm always been someone who has cared about, how do we do well by the environment, and the reality is that some proof of work as a mechanism for validating transactions requires a lot of energy. I've given props to the Ethereum community for their migration, and you announced last week the Crypto Climate Accord, of which many participants, including Joe Lubin from the Ethereum community, are very actively supporting, which I think is phenomenal.
So, and you often get criticized because of this. I think you mentioned before, you hold Bitcoin, you're bullish on Bitcoin, but the idea of proof of work is what is the issue, right? It's not that, okay, you're inherently angry at Bitcoin or you don't like Bitcoin, but rather the process of validating transactions and payment, it's not scalable, obviously lots of energy. So that's, what you're trying to emphasize, and that there's a better technology out there, for example, like the XRP ledger.
Yeah, look, I hope it's not so much the last part of what you said, and a little bit different than what I'd say. But one of the things I believe in life is that the first step to solving a problem is admitting you have one. And if you don't admit something's a problem, then you don't focus on solving it. And I think, when I get criticized for a lot of things. Some of them I don't even know what to say about some of them. But, this is one where it's like, look, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I'm very, very bullish on Bitcoin, period. That doesn't mean I can't also think that the mechanism for proof of work and the fact that 60 to 7% of mining happens in China on almost entirely coal-powered energy. Look, I think we just all should care. And could the Bitcoin blockchain use other mechanisms for validation? Yes, could. I'm not saying it should. I'm not saying it. At the end of the day, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin doing well is good for the entire crypto industry.
Got it. Now, there's a question that came from the community about the XRP escrow. This is often a hot topic of discussion. And, after doing a lot of research and understanding the escrow and the setup that you have there, what's the plan for the escrow moving forward? And could there be? There's a question that comes up. Could you burn some of it? Is that a possibility? Distribute it to other authorities, whoever, I don't know. What's the plan there, the vision for that?
Well, look, first of all, I think there's two answers to this. One, there's some misinformation out there, right? I mean, some people like to position the escrow as somehow Ripple dumping XRP on the community. It makes no sense for Ripple or any of the people around Ripple to dump XRP, right? That's not in the best interest of XRP ecosystem, of which Ripple is a very important piece, as am I. So, look, I think the way the escrow was set up, it was done it was the intent of, let's provide maximum transparency. Let's make sure that people totally understand what's happening here. And, I've used it as kind of a call to action for others in the crypto industry to be equally transparent. And, in some ways, I think that transparency has come back to bite us a little bit, ironically and frustratingly. But, look, I'm always open and interested in new ideas that are good for the XRP ecosystem. I don't rule anything out. And I think to the extent that there's things that make sense for the XRP ecosystem, then certainly Ripple would look at that.
Where do you see Ripple in 3 to 5 years?
Well, I mean, I'll probably borrow from a couple things I've already said. At the most macro sense, Ripple has had a vision that Chris Larsen articulated, and I remember interviewing with him when I joined the company. And from that first meeting, he talked about this idea of an internet of value, to truly let value move the way information moves today. And I think we all have been kind of desensitized to how much friction there is in payments in all aspects of our lives. And if you really can reduce that friction to zero or close to zero, I think you can unlock a lot of compelling opportunities. And that vision around Ripple has not changed. I think certainly we think about how do we go from moving billions of dollars through RippleNet and billions of dollars through our on-demand liquidity product to add zeros behind that, and over the next 3 to 5 years, we hope we can grow into those. But also, as I said, I think we think about how to leverage the XRP ledger for other compelling use cases, and there certainly are some that we are investigating. There's some that we kind of watch. There's some that we've invested in. I think we very publicly shared that. I think if we aren't the largest independent investor in crypto, we're close to it, and we invested a lot of other crypto projects. Some of them don't involve XRP because I genuinely believe like all boats can rise.
Sure.